I believe every single scientist should learn some level of coding and programming, particularly around data analysis. So things like R or Python to be able to handle large amounts of data or do the same kind of task over and over again. So today I'm going to walk you through the three main reasons that I truly think if you are a scientist right now and you are doing research, you should go ahead and start learning at least the basics of one coding language. The very first reason is to do efficient data analysis. And so, whenever you're doing data analysis in something like GraphPad or Excel or something like that, you have to go through the exact same steps over and over again to do the same analysis. So, if you're doing several comparisons between different things, if you're doing averages and standard deviations of different things, you literally have to either create kind of a template that allows you to just drag in Excel, or if you're doing it in something like GraphPad, you're doing that over and over and over again. Whereas if you can do coding, you can literally write a for loop to do all of those analyses in a few minutes. And so before I learned coding, most of my grad school, I did not actually at least implement coding. I did learn a little bit of Python during grad school, but for most of my data analysis, I was doing it in Excel and some in GraphPad. And so whenever you're doing data analysis in a user interface based system instead of a coding based system, you're going to be much less efficient. So there were things that did that took me weeks to do my analysis for a project. And I now realize that if I had known coding at the time, it literally would have taken me only a few minutes to do what took me weeks. And so being able to learn coding is a good way in being able to be more efficient in your analyses and to buy back some of your time. Because if a computer can do it faster than you just clicking a bunch of cells, then you can spend that time doing other things, whether that's more research, whether that's living your life, any of the things that you want to do. So if you want to save more time and be more efficient, highly recommend learning a coding language for your data analysis. The second major reason that I recommend that you learn a coding language is to have control over your analysis. So, again, anytime you're using a user interface, somebody else has coded what all of those buttons do. So, if you're doing a paired t test or an independent t test, there are actually a lot of parameters that you can control whenever you're coding that out. Especially when you get into more complicated analysis, something like a PCA or PLSDA, there are a lot of different things that you could have control over. But when you're using a user interface system, they choose those parameters ahead of time. So when you click a button, you only have control over whatever they're giving you access to control. Whenever you are controlling the coding, you can usually look in the documents for every single function you're using and really understand what that function is actually doing to your data. Especially in something like R or Python, most of the functions you're going to use to do statistical analysis or data analysis or things like that are going to be in packages or libraries. And so you can go and look at the documentation of that package, see what are all of the variables that you can change in that function to be able to get the result that you actually want, and you know exactly how that analysis was performed. Versus whenever you're doing something in like Excel, you can maybe look in its documentation, but you can't change a lot of those parameters that you could have control over whenever you're doing your data analysis through coding instead. So that is another reason to switch over to a coding situation for your data analysis so that you have control over all of those different parameters and you can make sure you're doing the analysis you actually want to be doing instead of being limited to the analysis that your program is giving you access to. The third reason to learn data analysis is career prospects. So, as we're moving forward, especially as AI is becoming a really big thing, there is a lot of coding going on now, even if you're not a programmer, especially in data science, data analytics. I'm currently employed as a senior research scientist, which basically means I'm a data scientist. I work primarily with Python and R all day long to be able to deliver insights for my employer. And so being able to have those skills now while you're in grad school, while you can still use it and show that you've been able to use it within your publications or projects or any of those things It's going to help you when you go to look for jobs because you now have an additional skill to bring to the table that other people in your field, if it's not common to know coding in that field, may not have. And you can now see where there could be higher efficiencies in the work that you're doing where other people in your field may not know. Even if you use something like Excel, if you can get into the deeper depths of how to automate a lot of things with Excel, you're going to be much further along than if you just know how to use Excel at a basic level. But then if you know coding and you can write an R script that processes what takes people usually a day to 2 days in a few minutes, now you can be even more efficient in your job and you have a better chance of getting more varieties of jobs than simply whatever you were doing in grad school. So overall, I would really recommend choosing a language to learn. If you are a scientist, you don't want to develop applications, you really just want to use it for data analysis, I would recommend starting with R. If you want to see my tutorials on R, I will have my channel, The Simple Code Guide, linked below. So that's where I'm going to put in my tutorials. I don't publish every week, but that's where those are going to exist if you want to check those out. The other thing you can do is work on Python. If you're thinking about making apps in the future, if you're thinking about doing things far beyond just data analysis, Python's a really good place to start instead. Especially if you want to do things like natural language processing. So if you're doing more qualitative work versus quantitative work, I would recommend checking out Python instead. It has a much larger range of libraries. However, R was kind of specifically made for data analysis, specifically made for scientists. And so it's going to have a lot of your more science specific packages involved, like Tidyverse, which is kind of your big collection of packages revolving around data analysis. So make sure that you look into at least one coding language, start learning the basics. It really only takes maybe a day to get the basics under your belt to be able to use something like R for your data analysis, and then you can always learn along the way. You could also use ChatGPT if you wanted to be able to figure out how to do specific things within R. I actually use ChatGPT a lot when I'm coding to figure out how to do things that I haven't done before, or use it in conjunction with reading the documents for different packages to understand how to do things a little bit faster than just reading the documents. So definitely make sure that you start learning a language today. If you are a scientist, check out my coding channel. I will leave that in the link down below. If this video is helpful, please like it and subscribe to this channel for more advice about how to become more efficient in your research. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.